So thank you all for coming and being here. I know there were multiple choices that you could have made, and so I appreciate that you made the choice to be a part of this session today. So my name is Dr. Ife Akinsheye Damon, and today I'm going to talk about how you can use community-based education to raise the child in the village. So just a little bit about me. This is my family. So I am a proud mom of 4 and a grandma of 2. My children, when I first got into education, my adult children were in elementary school. And they were my inspiration. Like, they really made me want to get into education to make the world a better place. And I know it sounds cheesy, but it really, it really is true. And it still is true to this day. My goal is to make the world a better place. So I am also a proud ovarian cancer survivor. Thank you. In addition to being an education consultant, I'm also a life coach and an artist. So those are just a few hats that I wear. I am a Kwanzaa girl. As you probably, you heard me talk about my parents wanted to give us Afrocentric names. And so I'm raised on principles of community. So it's embedded in who I am, just within in my own household culture. I've been in education for over 20 years. I've taught or led at every level from preschool all the way to grad school. So pre-K, elementary school, middle school, high school, and I teach teachers now with the City University of New York system, aka CUNY. Yep. And so when I was in the classroom, in the K-12 classroom, which is primarily my background is K-12, and even more specifically high school, I was often recognized as a highly effective teacher. I started in education and I'm special ed background, like I'm special ed certified. So it's also allowed me to teach every subject. So I have a very unique perspective, having taught, or led at all the levels, also teaching all of the perspectives has given me a unique vision, understanding of education that a lot of teachers don't typically get to have because they're usually like high school biology their whole time, or they're 3rd through 5th grade the whole time, but I've been able to have this variety of experiences. But when I first started, I started in Atlanta Public Schools, and it was when special education was a place. So back then, it was before, things started to become more integrated. It was just like, we don't want to see those kids in the hallways. We don't want them bothering, our scholars. Do what you need to do to keep them engaged. And then I was just thrown into education. I didn't have teacher's manual. I didn't even have class sets. I had one student book for the math, didn't have anything for social studies, and nothing for science. And I taught all 3 subjects in my very first year of just thrown in. And so I had to, I had class filled with Black boys with emotional behavior disorder as their label. And so they taught me. They hazed me into education and taught me how to be a great teacher because I had to learn how to keep them engaged, all right? So what I learned over the years is that it didn't matter what the subject, what the grade level, when the learning is connected to students' real lives, that's when they're likely to be engaged with content. And so that's the kind of teacher that I became, a teacher who connected learning to your life, to the world. So I was a teacher when teaching physics. I would show force and motion. I would show Fast and Furious videos to teach force and motion because the boys are gonna be like, oh, we got cars crashing, we got, car racing. So I learned, just whatever. It was important for me to know my students, so I knew how to meet them where they were. Yeah. And also, I very humbly and proudly say that I've been recognized by Time magazine as an American education hero. I was, thank you, I appreciate that. I was also selected to be the only teacher on a National Press Foundation panel with the, I was going to say Chancellor, it's not the right title, the Secretary of Education, Dr. Miguel Cardona. I've also been in Wall Street Journal, New York Times, and other publications talking about community-based education. And I founded the community-based education movement in 2022. So I'm going to talk to you today about community-based education. But before we go on, I would kind of like to get to know you all a little bit. So I'm just going to ask if you can introduce yourselves. It's small enough. I wasn't going to do like everybody could just kind of talk in groups, but the group is small enough where we can just share out together. So you can just share your name, your position in life, and your location, and then just this quote. Do you agree with this idea, or disagree? What does this mean to you? So it says, it takes a village to raise a child, and it also takes a child to raise a village. So I'm going to start over here, if that's okay with you.
Sure.
Okay.
Hi, my name is, excuse my voice. My name is Linda Thomas Batson, Dr. Linda Thomas Batson. I recently got my doctorate in social work from Tulane.
Congratulations.
I live in Freeport, Long Island. I'm retired, but I'm looking to work as an adjunct wherever I can find it. And I definitely believe in a village to raise a child. A child raises a village.
Thank you. Nice to meet you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Dr. Pepper Bonet Martin. Everybody affectionately calls me Dr. Pepper. And I accept and I say, yes, I am real, I do exist, and I'm not a soda. Like the M&Ms, right? I am the Director of Pupil Personnel Services for Wyandanch Union Free School District in Suffolk County, New York. I was born and raised in the Bronx and later moved to Rockland County and lived in Westchester, and now I live in Nassau County. So I'm definitely a New Yorker. And I would say it takes a village to raise a child, yes, and also a child to raise and strengthen a village. And I have other thoughts on it, but that's part of my presentation tomorrow, so I don't want to spoil it in case you're there. So thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Thank you. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Kathy Brown. I am currently an assistant professor of art education at the University of Arkansas, and I'm the director of our new graduate master's program. And I used to be a K-12 teacher for many years before I became a teacher educator like yourself. And when I think about the quote, it takes a village to raise a child to raise a village, I think about it now from my perspective with graduate students, because we couldn't have a program without them.
Right.
And so we have to meet the needs of the students and meet them where they are.
Thank you.
So they're raising us as we're raising them. This is a new program.
Thank you. I'm just going to go back over here just because you all came in before I finish this row.
Hi, my name is Lizzie. I'm a student here at LMU, but I'm a psych major. And I think the quote to me means that it's never individual. There's always some impact from a greater force, whether that's positive or negative. And I think in our generation now we have to focus on the positive and helping out one another, because that's a great impact in how we all strive to be better.
Thank you.
My name is McKenna Woodkin. I'm a student at East Tennessee State University. And this quote, I've heard it a lot, and I think it means that you need to rely on your outside relationships. Like outside of your immediate family, those cousins, coworkers, like the coworkers of your parents, they definitely play a role in how you're going to be raised.
Thank you. All right, right here first. And then you. Yeah, you right here. And then you next.
Hi, I'm Dr. Raquel Robinson Jones. I just graduated last month from Florida International University with a doctorate in business administration. Thank you. Currently, I have my own LLC called Phoenix Rising Management Solutions, where I do project management and will bridge into AI project management. In addition, I teach project management certification. And in terms of the quote, I really tend to harp on the other side, the right side, in regards to a child to raise a village. Being a native of the South Bronx, a lot of people want to keep you in a certain place, and that's a place in time, that's your foundation. You never lose that, but as you evolve through life, you learn different things and have different experiences, and that's where you as the child can raise the village and have things
Thank you. Thank you.
Hi, I'm Dr. Tawanda Sanders Williams, also defended on May 3rd at 1:22 p.m. And so, my position, I own my own organization called Cultivation of Returning Growth, LLC, in Pennsylvania. It's just specializing in working with families and senior population. And when I think about this quote, I think about community, where folks aren't necessarily your blood relative, but your parent. Trust that community to also be a part of enriching you, helping you to grow and to develop. So it definitely takes more than one, more than two, at times to be able to support you.
Thank you. Right, please start.
Hello everybody, my name is Maria, defended on May 16. English is my 5th language. I do not quite feel very comfortable speaking the language. I'm actually a presenter. Anyway, French is my 3rd language. I'm an educator. I've been teaching world languages in the District of Columbia in Maryland, as well as in Seoul. And so it takes a village to raise a child. It's actually, I was born in Africa, Cameroon, but I'm born in France, Paris. So, as an African, a village, of course, you think about a community. It's a collaboration. You can't raise a child by yourself. You have anybody, that to support and raise that child to become, a productive member of society. As well as the child also needs, we need a child. We need that particular child to be able to do the work. And that's something that I find very interesting when I get to my classroom, usually, I always look at that student and thinking about how can I impact that student and how that student changes my life as well, as a teacher and as a human being, John. That's where the emotional impact comes into play.
Thank you. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Dr. Letitia Vickery. I want to give a shout out to my Long Island crew. I also live in Freeport. I am an assistant professor of management and entrepreneurship at Hofstra University. And just a few months ago, stepped down from being an associate dean at their business school. The quote, I agree with it. I think we all know the village raising the child part, but the child raised in the village, I also focus on the fact that children will challenge you as they're supposed to, and they will raise you to another level through those challenges, right? They will force you to come outside of your comfort zone, come outside of the position that you are in now, and will push you to get more, be more, do more, because they need more. So that's how I interpret that it takes a child to raise a village.
Thank you.
Good afternoon, I'm Mark Usali. I'm research faculty at the University of South Florida in Tampa. And the quote, I think for me, it's just you need the community as much as the community needs you. Yeah.
Thank you. Back here, please. Either, yeah.
Mia and Dr. Mia, adjunct faculty, Cal State Community Fields, have my own organization. It's like a quote, takes the village. I think our village needs to be reorganized because we have some issues that we need to address to raise our child.
Thank you. Thank you. Would you like to? Mia, you spoke on the behalf. Okay. Thank you. And so, that's what today is about. This session is about we do need to do some other things. There is more that needs to be done. For me as a teacher, I remember there was a point in time where, for those who are teachers in the classroom, especially K to 12, but even at the higher ed level, there's a lot that is asked of teachers. It is stressful. It can be a very stressful career. And I remember one night I was just saying to myself, like, how can we relieve Like, how can we reduce the role of the teacher? Like, how can we not depend so much on the teacher to educate our students? And the immediate next answer, the ancestors whisper, is the community. It's the community. The community is the answer. So, it takes a village to raise a child. But on the other side, it also, for me, I've learned it also takes a child to raise a village. We often say children are the future, but they're actually the now. And we need to start to look at it in that way. Children are an untapped resource that the community needs, but also the community is an untapped resource that the schools need. And so for me, this is what community-based education is all about. It's about raising the child and the village together. So can I just get a time check?
Oh, sure.
Thank you.
It's 4:03.
4, okay, thank you. So we're gonna go through this a little bit quickly. I'm just gonna ask a few people just to share out some answers. So what do the following words mean to you? Community, learning, and education. So we'll start with community. What is community? Just say you want to just call out.
The neighbor.
Okay, the neighbor. Anyone else want to share? Gathering. Collaboration. Thank you. And so this is an official definition. Community is defined as a unified body of individuals. So that community can be, of course, your neighborhood, but it can be the school community for students. It can be the city, state, the nation, and the global community. And all these little small micro sub-communities as well. If you do knitting, you can have your own knitting community. We're in the era of Facebook where there are 1,000 groups of communities of people that have a particular common interest. Now, what about learning? Can someone share their thoughts? What is learning?
Growing your knowledge base.
Okay, growing your knowledge base. Anyone else?
Processing
Processing?
information.
Processing information.
And the style in which you do it.
Okay.
Critical thinking.
Say it again.
Critical thinking.
Critical thinking. Thank you. All right. So again, this is just a technical dictionary definition. It's knowledge or skills that are acquired through either experience, through study, or through being taught. And so when we think about ourselves, like, okay, yes, learning is definitely the being taught part. People think about schools, but think about when we all learned how to walk. Like nobody really taught us that. No one gave us a manual that said right foot, left foot, 1, 2, 3. You had to experience that. You had to go through that, but then there are things you just might want to study on your own to learn. Like, whatever it may be, 'cause knitting, again, as an example, if it's something that's of interest to you that you want to learn. But then, of course, there's the classic way of just being taught. So my next question is, what is education?
I would say a formal or informal path of inspiring learning for a community of people.
Okay, all right, thank you. Anyone else?
The process of exchanging knowledge.
Okay. All right, yes.
The process of extrapolating knowledge and to be able to put that into real time.
Thank you. So, again, a basic definition is receiving or giving systematic instruction. So it's being very intentional about how you're going to help someone learn. And so this education takes place, of course, in the school setting, K-12 setting, but also at the university level. So when we talk about, kind of put it all together, first I'm going to talk about community-based learning, but then you'll see we're going to talk about community-based education as well. So when I'm talking about community-based learning, I'm talking about learning that results from connecting what's being taught in the classroom to what's happening in the community, in students' lives. So, and that definition is loosely from Great Schools Partnership, and they also give 4 categories of community-based learning. And so the first one is instructional connections. You think about that like anything that's just a student is learning about their community. So it could be current events, for example. So it's just you're doing something, you're connecting it to something outside of the classroom. I'm more focused on the latter 3. So the first one is community integration, and that's when community resources are brought into the school to help students learn. But then there's also community participation where the students actually go into the community in order to enhance learning. And my favorite is the citizen action. And this is when the audience for and potential beneficiaries of students' work include community, organizations, and the general public. So this is when we start to really talk about the village and the child coming together. So I'm not gonna, it's a lot, looks like a lot, but this was a slide that I used in my doctoral research for the participants that I interviewed. And so I just wanted everybody to have like a common understanding of what I meant when I asked them questions. And so community-based learning, this sentence is learning that results from community members being involved as partners in the learning process. So you see that's more of the latter, like it's about the partnership. So it's not just kids going on field trips or maybe someone comes in every once in a while, but it's about coming together, the community being a partner in the learning process. And so the expectation behind community-based learning is that community involvement will help students understand the academic content and by using academic content to facilitate practical learning and contribute to community development. So, in other words, it's about students using academic skills and 21st century skills and what I coined third millennium skills to learn about and improve their communities, with their communities. All right, so some examples can be students in a geometry class, they may do a project with an engineer or a construction worker or a fashion designer because they all use geometry. So it's about, part of it is answering that age-old question, what does this have to do with the real world? So let's bring in people who use these things in the real world to show them how they're using the real world. They can, in biology class, do projects with biologists, doctors, and state parks. In history class, they could engage with reporters, psychologists, and sociologists. And in English class, they can engage with lawyers, activists, and politicians. So these are just a few examples. But you see how quickly, these are the core courses that everybody has to go through. And it's this is 12 people, 12 different, careers and titles that could be engaged with students immediately. So now let's look at community-based education. So community-based education, the way I look at it as instructional approaches that allow students to use academic and 21st century skills to learn about and improve their communities with their community. So I just finished saying that, but that is the way that I look at it. And so again, this is where the idea of it takes a child. We know it takes a village to raise a child. We've all been hearing that all our lives. But the idea of it also takes a child to raise a village is the part that is necessary for us to start to also think about when we're thinking about that communal approach. So I'm just going to show a quick video. So just to share just a little bit more about the community-based education movement. So I founded it, I announced it on my dissertation at my defense. I said, you know what, I'm just gonna start it right now because my doctoral research was on community-based learning. So as you can see clearly, I'm a big advocate of community-based learning. I think that is something that we should be doing. It's a traditional way, but it's also new in America. It will be innovative. It will be innovation. And so, but it's not happening. It's not happening. And so that's what I decided to research is why isn't this happening? And the top two reasons, I'll talk about it a little bit more, but I'm just kind of going because of time. The top two reasons were a lack of knowledge and a lack of support. I interviewed 10 New York City high school teachers to find out what their barriers were to implementing community-based learning. And so lack of knowledge and lack of support were the top two primary reasons. And so I started the community-based education movement to address that. Mm-hmm. So I'll talk about it a little bit more, but under the umbrella of the movement is the for-profit CBE Consulting, where I go into schools and help them to implement community-based education projects into their curriculum. But then there's also the nonprofit, which is the Global Academy for Community-Based Education. And that's where we provide a platform for students to showcase their action-based research. All right, so this video is about the community advocacy project that students engaged in. And it's a combination of the results of these students were in the schools that I consulted with, and also they participated in the expo that the nonprofit hosted. The Community Advocacy Project is a project. Hope y'all can hear. Can you hear it all? Okay. Is a project where students identify an issue that negatively impacts one of their communities. And I like to say one of their communities because oftentimes we think about community as just a neighborhood. But it can be the school community, it can be one of their clubs, of course it can be the neighborhood or New York City at large, but it can also be the global community. Our students are absolutely globally minded more than any other generation before. And so they identify an issue, they have to then research the issue, so they collect primary data by creating their own surveys and interviews, disseminating those to people relevant for, and they also then have to collect secondary data, so online research about their issue. They then take that knowledge and they formulate a plan of action. So for me, this is the real magic, is because students are taking action in their community around this change. So what that can look like is providing knowledge to the community about the issue. So if they find that one of the major barriers or root causes is a lack of knowledge, there are students who are creating PSAs about the issue and letting people know like what the issue is, but also how you can take action to move towards change. And so some students are directly engaging with organizations that are already focused on the issue. So like tobacco is their challenge, the issue that they're focused on. They may be joining organizations that focus on helping to reduce tobacco use. And so there's a wide variety. It is student-centered. The decision of what issue they want to focus on is student-centered. They get to choose, they get to decide what action they want to take. I provide the parameters of the project itself, but then it's really up to them. That's the part that I also love, because there's not enough opportunities to discuss something that matters to them. And then once they take their action, their culminating task is that they'll present their action-based research at the Community Advocacy Project Expo in May, and at that expo, they'll also have a call to action for the community to join them further in their cause. And so I'm excited that this is something that is taking place in the classroom. I asked the students, how do you feel about doing something like this? And like a lot of students like, I think this is great. I've never had an opportunity to talk about mental health, and it's something that matters to me. I've lost a friend to suicide or whatever the particular issue may be, but it's an opportunity for them to dive into it more and also to help provide knowledge to others. So I don't know, I didn't realize the volume was going to be just only for my laptop, but just in case you didn't hear clearly, I'll give a quick recap. But so that video, the audio that you heard was actually from an interview that I did previously, and then after doing everything, putting the clips together to show how my vision came to fruition. And so the students engaged in, over 450 students last school year engaged in a community advocacy project where they had to identify an issue that negatively impacts their communities, conduct research, collecting quantitative and qualitative data from both primary and secondary sources. So my curriculum teaches them how to create surveys and interview people from the community. But then once they gather that information, they have to then use it to take action. So it's not just about, for me, it's not just about them learning about things and they just discuss it in class, but like how, again, the children are not the future, they're the now. So how are we using them now in order to elevate their communities, in order to improve their communities? And so they had to take action, and then once they took action, the next step was to create their, to put together their presentation of their research. And at the expo, that's where they showcased that research. So at the expo, there were over 100 students in that space to showcase there. And then they also had to have a call to action for the community. So it's with the community, and by the way, the actions that they took during the take action section portion many of them engaged with community members at that point. They had to engage with community members, obviously, in order to conduct the research, to get interviews and surveys. So the community is a part of the process. And then in the end, they're having a call to action to have the community help further their causes. So it was very powerful experience to see the young people. I had some other videos, but due to tech issues, I can't show them right now. But so you get the idea of what the vision of what community-based education, that's one way that community-based education can look. But for me, that's one of the most powerful ways because it's about that citizen action. So some of the benefits of community-based education or the highlights and why to me, everybody should be doing it is because it's an experiential learning model. When I first started my doctoral program 100 years ago, it was focused on experiential learning, but I became ABD, and it was a good thing that I did because there were things that I learned later that made me understand that I needed my doctoral research needed to be focused on community-based learning, not just experiential learning. And so it's also a student-centered approach. The students, they pick the issues that matter to them. So it wasn't that a teacher just said, oh, you're gonna do homelessness, you're gonna do mental health. They went through a process of analyzing their communities, thinking about what are the things we love about our community, what are the things that we would like to see change, and then deciding on what issue they wanted to be a researcher in. These students are and that's, I just wanna, on a side note, just say as a teacher, you know, I've seen a lot over 20 years. And one of the things that is one of my biggest issues is teachers' low expectations for students, especially black students, okay? And even more when I moved to New York City, I'll say black and brown students as well. But those low expectations, oh, these kids can't, oh, our kids know, oh, they can't, you know, like that's my Staten Island limitation. But what I know is that when you raise the bar, they will rise to the occasion if you give them the chance. And so you hear these students are doing real research. Like they're collecting quantitative, they learn quantitative data, qualitative data, like they can do that. And this is a model that can be used at the elementary school level. These were high school students, but this model is I say 3 to 12. Not necessarily catered to kindergarten, but even they can do a little something too. But so I just wanted to share that. So, but it's also collaborative because they have to engage with the community. They have to have thought partners and discuss strategies and ideas. It's definitely, as you can see, it evokes higher order thinking skills because they have to be solution oriented. You're not just complaining. Like that's how I was raised. You can't just complain about the problem. Just don't even say nothing. If you don't have some ideas around solutions, just be quiet. So this is the mindset that I want young people to have. It's like, you can not only identify problems, but you can do something about it. You don't have to just complain about it or feel helpless. So those higher order thinking skills, they came up with some really powerful things. A lot of students, in their research, they found that a lack of knowledge was a primary cause, root cause for whatever their issue was. And a lot of students created PSAs and put them on their own social media. Like how many kids are putting their schoolwork on their own social media, So it's really making that connection between the classroom and the community and sharing it with their own community, yes.
So how did you kind of conceptualize how community-based learning can be implemented in higher education college? Because I'm a sophomore here at OU in the psych and AFAM double major, and what I really like about the AFAM department here is that it is kind of rooted in that community learning and conversation with learning instead of just a professor just talking to me. I'm also talking back to her and asking questions and answering questions. But that's not something that's widely done here at the university level, and I'm assuming that also happens at other universities where it's not just a conversation with instructors and students. So from your experience, how did you kind of guide an institution, especially a PWI that has black and brown students like this one? How would you kind of guide an institution to implement community-based learning?
So the way I would, as a consultant, let's say they contracted me, I would do a community mapping analysis. First of all, understanding what their needs are as a school, like what are the goals that you want students to achieve, but then also, like, let's look at the resources that we have here in the community, and then how can we merge the two? You know, I can teach institutions how to identify their own community partners, or I can help them to identify the community partners myself. But ideally, I need everybody to be able to become self-sufficient because, you know, there's a whole world out here, and so I really want to see this grow throughout the entire world. But yeah, teaching them how to identify community partners, teaching them how to analyze the curriculum and analyze the community to be able to find where those things match.
So I do this type of work at the college level, and in my field of entrepreneurship, we look at it as service learning, which is
Yes.
the same thing,
Yep.
right? And so essentially, because I work at a business school, we call projects like these consulting projects. So we train the students how to do consulting work where you're walking them through essentially the same steps. You have to do some kind of research, you have to identify the stakeholders, you have to connect with local community organizations, develop your project, understand when you're connecting with that organization, what the challenges that they're facing that they want you to work on, come up with an identifiable solutions and reasonable solutions that they can actually implement, create implementation steps for them. Maybe you might have time to help them start implementing it, right? Through my classes, we've done it at different levels. We've done it locally for local organizations within the Long Island community, but then I mainly do it internationally. So the students will connect with businesses that are located in other countries, and to go through that same process, and then we incorporate a trip to that country so they get that cultural immersion in it as well. So there's all different types of versions and ways that those projects can be implemented. That was a great question.
Yeah, and I feel like through my research, I see your hand too in a second. And I am gonna lovingly not do questions too much because this is my third session today and I see how the time can go. And I really do wanna go through this before we can end up getting into just discussion and not get my stuff done. So I really do want to, so I am gonna ask if we could just hold the questions until the end. Please write it down and definitely ask, but I did just want to say, in my own research, I did have to use service learning because community-based learning, there was nothing coming up for that. So I had to use some of my keywords were service learning, but a lot of times the service learning, it was higher ed. It wasn't really happening in the K-12 space, or if it was like an after-school program. And for me, the most important thing is for this to live in the classroom because that's where you get the most students. The kids who are in the enrichment programs, typically they can be kind of good to go, they're all kind of, maybe already on their way, but when you're, but the kids who need it the most are not going to those programs. They're not going, to the after school programs. They're going straight home or whatever else they may be doing. And so for me, these types of things must live in the classroom. So I just wanted to share that. So also just quickly, community-based education, community-based learning is also culturally responsive and sustaining. It is a project like you just saw, the community advocacy project. You can see that it's something that is culturally relevant to a student. It's something that matters to them and connects to their real lives. But it also can be culturally responsive because it has that communal approach, especially when we're talking about children of color. When you look at Dr. Zaretta Hammond's work on culturally responsive teaching in the brain, she shares that culturally, children of color are communal. There's a whole index on communal cultures versus individualistic cultures. And so the children are they're culturally used to a communal approach. And so that approach needs to be in schools and embedded in schools. And the data shows that that helps students learn better as well. And then it also develops the 21st century skills. So, there's communication, there's creativity, there's critical thinking, collaboration in there, adaptability. So these 21st century skills, it gives them a chance to develop those as well as what I said I coined in term third millennium skills, because I do consider myself a visionary, and even though I may not be here for year 3000, it's important to me to help cultivate a collective mindset early, because I feel that the third millennium is going to, well, we're in the third millennium, but the fourth millennium is like, we as a globe, we need to have it together completely globally, united in a harmonious way. And so, so I do that's something that I focus on as well. All right, so I'm not gonna go through, because I kind of talked about them already, but these are just some of the things, the higher order thinking skills, experiential learning. It is active, it has the active learning, the problem-based learning, the inquiry-based learning, and the project-based learning, all in it, as you can see. So like, y'all see why I feel the way I feel? Like, this is what we need? Like, it's checking off all of the boxes, of the things that school systems want to see. As a teacher, I knew that the system wants the students to be, the academics to be developed. That's the name of the game. That's what the standards, that's what they care about. But I knew that my students, that's not what motivates them per se. And so it has to be engaging and connected to them. And the community wants that, our kids to be prepared when they come out. And so this is, what the focus of community-based education is. So again, I already talked about the culturally responsive and sustaining education. I always just like this image, so I like to use it. We know that, I'm sure we all know the difference between equality and equity, and so it's an equitable approach. But we do want to move towards justice. This is the part a lot of people don't talk about. Like, we have to acknowledge that there are specific barriers. If there weren't barriers there, we wouldn't even have to have a conversation of equality or equity. And so we really want to move towards justice. Like, equity is just our in-between phase, but we really want to move towards justice, and we want to empower young people to have that mindset before they even get out of high school. I already talked about the collaborative part, so they collaborate with a variety of people in the classroom and outside of the school as well. So this one is the 21st century skills and my own identified third millennium skills. So you can kind of just see, I'm not gonna go through all of them, but like just a global unity consciousness is what my vision is. I want our young people and their grandkids and their grandkids, my grandkids to have that unity consciousness. We all talk to everybody when you shared your ideas about that original quote. That's what everybody was sharing. Like, we're all in this together, and we really need to start to embody that mindset and move in that way. But then there's also things like empathy, exponential thinking, contributing to the planet, being goal-oriented, compassionate. That's a big one for me, is compassion. And that's definitely something that is going to take time, because we have to understand also like the role of mental health, emotional health, and how that can be a barrier to someone having compassion. So, just want to share. So my doctoral, this is my conceptual framework that I created. I took the angle of students are not graduating prepared for a 21st, ever evolving global 21st century. And the traditional instruction does not provide opportunities for community-based education, and when that's the case, they enter the workforce, they enter college lacking these necessary 21st century skills. However, when those barriers are removed, take them through community-based education, they graduate having developed those skills, they enter college and careers having those soft skills that everybody complains the young people don't have. And so this is it's a real concern. And so community-based education is a viable solution to that, in my opinion. So just quickly, I kind of already talked about it, but I interviewed 10 New York City high school teachers to find out what their barriers were to implementation. And this was, there were 3 themes. So even though it was teachers who I interviewed, they mentioned other stakeholders. So they mentioned teachers lacking knowledge, teachers lacking support, but then they also mentioned administrators needing knowledge, students needing support. community partners lacking knowledge of how to engage with students and other stakeholders such as parents who I consider to be community partners. So it's not necessarily separate. Anybody outside of the school building is a community partner, but also they lack knowledge, they need support. So it was very interesting, and I didn't include the slide, but it's like a matrix of everybody needs knowledge and support. My data showed that everybody needs knowledge and support from each other. So every box was checked off in the matrix of teachers need support from community, they need support from administrators need support from teachers, the community, other stakeholders, like everybody needs it. So again, it's that Ubuntu mindset, you know, we're in this together. So again, when I defended my dissertation, I also, at my defense, started the community-based education movement. And so the mission of the community-based education movement is to promote empowerment, self-determination, and meaningful collaboration among educators, students, and community partners to create and sustain community-based education in schools. So our goals are to bring awareness to community-based education because it's not a household name yet, but that's my goal for everybody. Oh, community-based learning, community-based education. So bringing awareness, providing that knowledge and support, because for those of us in the room who are teachers, we've seen too many times, like there's a new reform, they have that one-day PD, everybody's in the auditorium or wherever, you learn, and then it's like, all right, now go into your classrooms and be great, you know. And what happens is teachers close their door, and they do the same chalk and talk that they've been doing for the past 30 years. And so that support is a critical piece that is embedded into what we do. Also conducting continuous research on the effectiveness of implementation, like, you know, it's necessary. Like, I have to have data to show that this works in order for other people to be like, this is something our school needs as well, or our system needs. And then finally is to offer the platform for students to be able to share their action-based research, which we saw at the expo. All right, so now for the educators in the room, these are some of the ways that you can incorporate community-based education into your curriculum. So you can do it by having students research the community so they can understand a particular phenomenon, bringing awareness to an issue. You can also bring the community into the classroom, so thinking about that first slide that I shared, or one of the early slides about the types of community-based learning. So you can bring a speaker in, they can, community partners can come in and collaborate for a project, they can bring in artifacts, and also they can be an audience for students in their final projects. It's like we saw at the expo where the community is a part of the expo and they're the audience that's learning from these students. And just think about how empowering that is for students to be teaching their community about issues. You know, some of the number one issue was mental health, by the way, for students. Students identified mental health. And that was the top issue. Gun and gang violence was number 2. And then like climate justice was third. But there were 45 or 48 different topics that students identified on their own, you know, going through the process of my curriculum, but no one told them what they had to pick. And so that's the part that excites me. And then also bringing the classroom out into the community. So yes, field trips, but field trips that are more relevant and more meaningful. So teaching students in other schools, that's one of the things I really want to see happen a lot more. High school students go to middle schools and elementary schools. Middle school students go to elementary schools, but I also feel like elementary school students go to the middle schools and high schools as well, because we just all have blind spots, and there are certain perspectives that we may not be aware of, and younger people may be able to bring that awareness. Also, collaborating with industry experts to work towards solutions. So there were some students who collaborated, like there was a tobacco organization in Staten Island that the students collaborated with to do some things around bringing awareness to tobacco. There was some people who worked on some climate justice, some students, they joined some climate justice organizations to do some work. So it's like they took extra time even outside of school to do something additional to improve their communities, but it was still connected to the schoolwork. putting the context into, putting the content into context on the job. So like even job shadowing is something that we should, like I would love to see, like one of my visions, if I get to create some community-based learning schools, is to have an apprentice type of model. By the time you're in high school, because I've taught all of the levels, I already know by the time you're in high school, you've already done everything. You've already had, it may not be as deep, but when I taught physics, it was to 8th grade students. By the time you graduate middle school, you have touched a little bit of everything. And I honestly feel like there's a lot of time being wasted diving deep into some of these areas when you could really be focusing on things that are going to really develop students, as opposed to like Pythagorean theorem or a squared plus b squared, you know, like, yeah, okay, in the meantime, the kids need to learn that, but it is my hope and vision that a lot of these standards will change over time and become more focused on transferable skills as opposed to these very technical skills, especially because we're continuing to evolve, you know, so like AI is, you know, on the rise, and there are a lot of things that humans won't need to do that we were doing 50 years ago, you know, or that we're doing now, and in 2 years from now, those things may be replaced. Like automation is really, you know, making a lot, is making headway, it's growing quickly and exponentially. And there are positions, I don't remember the percentage, but it's like in 10 years, like over 50% of the jobs will be new jobs that don't even exist right now. So we need students to be able to have a mindset to be adaptable, to be flexible, to be able to pivot, and not be just focused on one path and then don't have any, you know, can't think about anything else. All right, so for the students now, when we got some students back there, ways that you can support community-based education curriculum development is by providing ideas, like having a seat at the table to be able to say, hey, I think that, you know, have you considered this? Have you considered maybe we should do, so like for you to answer your question even further is speak up about it and say, hey, you know, you can even use my name. I was at Dr. Damon's session, and there, you know, community-based education movement is doing some really great things, and I think that we should think about how can we start to incorporate the community more into the curriculum. Are you the person that I should talk to about it? If not, who? You know, and work your way all the way up to the president if you need to, or to the provost if you need to, you know, but speak about it. You all have the ideas. Like, you know, I'm a little outside the box, but you all are fresh, like your minds are even, like you're less jaded. I've been jaded by the system. You all are young and hopeful. Well, I hope hopeful, keep hope alive. And, you know, but your voice is needed. Your ideas are needed. You are the now, okay? Not the future. And then ways that community, so everyone else, if you weren't a teacher or a student, you're a community partner. And so these are some of the things that you can do to help support community-based education development. So you can provide data to students, and it's very similar to what we saw what the teachers do, okay, but it's you doing it. The teachers bring you in, you do it. You can visit schools and be a speaker, bring artifacts, adopt a school, which is something that I really want to see more businesses start to do, is to say, hey, you know, there's this school that's right down the block, and I would like to have my own community advocacy project. Our organization is focused on mental health. We would like to really do something with this school because we know that, you know, within that community, there's a lot of whatever that is directly an effect of mental health challenges. So can you help us create some sort of project that we can then bring to the school and do with the school? But also, oops, it says hosting schools. But you can host schools. I didn't just realize that. But yeah, you can collaborate with industry experts, work towards solutions. Again, putting the content into context on the job and offering students community service and internship. So even though I do want these things to live in the classroom, I also am not saying that it can't live anywhere else, because we need every possible angle to address it. So, can somebody give me a time check?
4:41.
Okay, so we don't have time to really do this one. I wanted you to kind of share some ideas around what you could do in your particular role to help collaborate to raise a child in the village. But I just invite you to think about it. And not just think about it, but consider really like heavily taking action, okay? And these are just some questions that to consider, but I'm not gonna go through them because of the time. But you, again, just like I shared with the young lady, like you wanna do an analysis of the curriculum. What are the things that students need to learn? What are the resources that we have in the community? Who can help to bring this to life even more? Because teachers, and I'm a teacher, so it's no shade, but teachers are not experts in, besides, they're expert in education, but they're not experts. So they may be teaching geometry, but they don't know what an engineer knows. They don't know how to use, they only know geometry to the extent of teaching geometry, but they don't know how to really bring it, teach it to the test. They don't know how to bring it to life. And so that's why we need community to come in so that they can bring it to life. So, as I shared, CB Consulting is the for-profit arm of the community-based education movement. And we do offer services to schools and community-based organizations and businesses. So I already shared like the vision for businesses to help businesses develop a curriculum that they can then take to schools themselves. But also I work with schools to help them to develop curriculum that they can use and incorporate community-based education. And then also I do work with community-based organizations like enrichment programs, after-school programs as well, so that they can engage in the community advocacy project as well. Because even with it being in an after-school program, it's still developing their academic skills. So, and that's the real key, is that they need their skills developed. So, you know, you can definitely feel free to take a picture of the slide with my business card, and definitely feel free to reach out. What kind of advocate would I be if I didn't have a call to action, right? So my call to action is to ask you all to consider joining the community-based education movement. That just means creating a free account, okay? But besides creating the free account, once you go into the website, cbemovement.com, you'll see the member portal, and in there is an inventory form for teachers, for students, and for community partners. And so by completing that form, that allows, that it's a database. Like the vision is to create a database so that if a school's like, hey, I'm in Cincinnati and I need some community partners, we can look in this database and say, okay, we have people in this area right here in Cincinnati, or, you know, in another area, in another place. But the vision, this is why it's a movement. It's gonna take, you know, a little bit of time, but the goal is to have a database of educators who can be connected with community partners and students who are student ambassadors. So yes, they may be students in their school, but they can also educate other teachers on how to implement community-based education, because they will be ambassadors of it and already have the experience. So, so if you do join the movement, I just say thank you on that. And then this is my final slide. Thank you, that's me, thank you. And it's another QR code, and if you can, please, it's just a few questions. So just to give me, again, it's always data. This is part of my research. Because right now I'm doing the first thing is bringing awareness to community-based education. And so if you can complete that form, I think it's maybe 5 to 7 questions on there. And that data is very valuable to me, so I appreciate it. Thank you all.
Thank you.
And if anyone has any questions now, we can. I know we do have our keynote at 5, but if anybody, I saw your hand earlier, so I wanted to come back to you.
So, one of my questions is, you brought up community enrichment, really trying to engage with our audience, that are students, but also like ways to captivate teachers as well. So, I'm a cybersecurity major, and we use a lot of AIs, and so I like the idea that you brought up about going on trips, going on these different touring ways, like real life ways. Now, how would you feel if we were to be like a meta version of that? Since society is always matriculating, the way of how people think, a lot of times, yes, it is living in real time, in the present, but it also is adapted to like how I can also correlate to the meta, because I feel as if as much time as I'm pouring into real time is as equal as enough as I should be pouring into the metaverse. And that kind of goes how time is going along with IT.
See, this is a prime example of why you students are needed. Because like you're opening my mind just in this conversation, like where does community-based education live in a virtual space, virtual reality, right? Because I'm a little old school, so you got to make sure I'm even thinking correctly. So when you say metaverse, you talk about the virtual, right, space. Okay, yes. So I love that idea, and I think that is very future forward thinking. And I want to communicate with you. I want to, make sure that we exchange contact info, because I would like to explore that more as well. Because the reality, you saw my children. So I have 2 adult children, but I also have 2 teenagers still. And my 13-year-old is like completely immersed in I don't even know how much money I've paid for V-Bucks. Like for virtual money, this is how you want to spend your money on something that doesn't, but it matters to him, and this is the reality of it's a generational gap. So to me, it's crazy, but in 50 years, the whole world may be operating like a Ready Player One, type of thing. And so that is the reality that we need to not act like it's not going to exist and embrace it instead. My concern would be, especially we're talking about systemic barriers, my concern would be the access, equitable access. Like, does everybody have access, or is it only people who have the money to be able to, like my son, he would be okay, but what about, well, maybe he'd be okay, because if it's $10,000, he's out of it too. You know what I'm saying? So, but that's my concern, is how do we make sure that it's accessible to everyone? Keeping that third millennial mindset in place. How does this address everybody? How is this something for everyone and not just for a few? So that's just something, you always got to think about the unintended consequences. You always have to think about things that just are in your blind spot, particular barriers in order to be prepared and things like that. So, but yeah, I love that idea, and I think that it definitely could, because to me, and I may be wrong, but to me, it makes me think about gaming. But I don't know if that's the correct, for my, young people, let me know, is it more than just gaming when we're talking about the metaverse? Or is it, and then also, I talked about mental health, and I just want to bring that up again, because for me that it can be a concern. It's like, do you become isolated and only engaging in the metaverse, but you might be spending all your time with AI. Like, even in the metaverse, if you're not engaging with other people in the metaverse, and you're let's just say, for example, my son, if he's just playing a game against a computer, he's not engaged with other people. Now, if he goes online, he's playing with other people, he's engaging with other people, but that's a concern of mine too. Just in my initial thoughts of hearing about this, is how do we make sure that we don't move towards isolation, because that's the opposite of what I'm talking about. Let's all get together. So let's not put things in place that further isolate people from community. So, yes.
I think, I guess I have a question. I just want to hear your perspective on how this can be implemented in underfunded schools, particularly high schools, with community-based learning and service learning. LMU here, we do have the funding for that. I was able to take a service-based trip to South Africa this summer, and I was able to receive financial aid to pay for that trip. But I was born and raised here in LA, and I went to a very underfunded high school in the inner part of LA, Dorsey High School, and we barely had teachers, like we didn't have books, like most of the classrooms and like we have a bunch of buildings and most of those buildings are empty because there's no teachers to fill up those classes and no students to fill up those classes. So how would this be implemented in a school like that and like other schools like, you know, like Hawkins and Kershaw, like all these inner city black and brown schools that don't even have the funding to staff the schools, like how can we implement community-based learning into that?
So as I hear that, to me, that's even more of a reason why we need community to be a part of it, because, you know, again, we rely on teachers too much. To be everything, besides just instructors, we're the counselors, we're, you know, feeding kids, like it's a lot. And so I would definitely say in a low income school, like if I was collaborating with them, it's gonna be always gonna pretty much be the same answer. We gotta do an analysis. What do you have? Because for one, like the funds of knowledge, you know, is, if you're not familiar with that term, it's just, instead of when teachers ask like, how smart are you? Instead it's, how are you smart? So just, it's the same words, but just that little bit of switch is, now we're looking at you as an asset. You don't have to know what I know, you know, because that's the traditional model. I'm gonna teach you what I know, and then you show me that you know what I know. No, that's not working. You know, instead, well, how are you smart? What assets can you bring to the classroom? How can you? So even thinking about how the students, again, this is why the students have to be at the table. Because that's one of the biggest problems that we've had in American education, is that we're always trying to say what the students need, but we're never asking them what they need. Yeah, or no. Right, exactly. Because you give them opportunity, they will rise to the occasion to teach. I used to love to let my kids, students teach some subject, you know, and they hate it, but then they love it, you know. And so providing them with those opportunities to do that. But also I would say, even for me, like at the school may not have a budget, but like the district may have some budget, and I can do training at the district level for the teachers or the teacher leaders, and provide that support, show them what it looks like to provide support, in the materials that help to measure that you're, you know, ensure that you're implementing the program correctly, because it really doesn't have to take a lot. You know, you just have to know, like, what are your resources in the community and how can you pull them in? I hope that answers.